you're better off, and I hate saying it this way, you're better off if you're a store pushing a graphic novel than you are a single comic, because the hope is, and we've always felt this way erroneously, is that you're better off pushing a single comic because, if I can get you to buy issue 1, then I've sold the next 9 issues. It seems like it's not working out that way anymore because people are just so inundated with books and so behind on their stuff that the odds of them actually reading it at a time to do any business on 2, 3, 4, 5 is not great.
In the Midwest, the best is there waiting, so come and join the conversation. Eyes to approved, fan and artist and creator too. What? This is how the challengers do. What? Keep the conversation moving along. Keep reading comics, keep your local store strong. If it's hard, then it's a job for the challengers. What? Comics and conversation, y'all.
From Challengers Comics and Conversation in Chicago, this is Contest of Challengers, a comics industry business podcast with
Patrick Brower.
Patrick Brower.
Patrick Brower.
Patrick Brower.
Patrick Brower.
Patrick Brower.
Patrick Brower and W. Dal Bush.
W. Dal Bush.
Dal Bush.
Dal Bush.
Dal.
Dal.
W. Dal Bush.
Yes, that is correct. As Chicago's own James Van Alsdale has just told you, this is Contest of Challengers, a comics industry business podcast from Challengers Comics and Conversation. I am your co-host, Patrick Brower.
I'm your other co-host, W. Dal Bush.
And the reason I am doing a second introduction is I want to just elaborate a little bit more on what it is we do here, because there's some new people that have been listening, and we're grateful for that. And in the past 2 months, our listenership has almost doubled.
Wow.
So that is kind of amazing. So there's 4 of you now. So thank you very much to those 4. No, that's a joke. There's way more than 4 of you. So thank you for the people that have found us, however you found us. A handful of new patrons as well at varying pledge levels.
Neat.
So there is interest in what it is we do here. And what we do here is talk about what it takes to run a comic book store in the city of Chicago in the year 2024. And all of
Which was weird for those episodes that were airing in 2021.
Yeah. I mean,
that was very
we were
forward-thinking.
very predictive.
Yeah.
We were wrong on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think
we're wrong on stuff in 2024.
Is kind of a hallmark of this podcast and how we do our business, of course. Huge congratulations to James Van Alsdale for hitting episode 1000 of his podcast, Car Con Carne. And it's a little bit frustrating because, well, let's face it, Contest of Challengers started before Car Con Carne.
It did, that's true.
But during the pandemic, he went 5 episodes a week, and we stayed weekly. So now we're in the early 700s, and James is at 1,000. And also his numbering is going to be off because he's doing multiple episode 1000 celebrations, and I don't know if each of those plays into a separate episode.
Maybe.
But James has been the voice of the intro and outro of this podcast for many, many years now, and he's always willing to make changes when I ask him to do new versions.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know James, he is the voice of Chicago media. He has also been a Chicago DJ. He was a Chicago DJ for a very long time on a number of stations, and a lot of us have listened to him for decades.
Yeah.
And of course, if you listen to this podcast, you've been listening to him all this time.
Mm-hmm.
Hooray!
Hooray!
Hooray for that.
Hey.
So what we do is we talk about the events of the comic book industry during the week and how that impacts how we do our job, how we run our business, how we order the books we order. We talk about things that have happened within Challengers itself and how that impacts business and how we do things. And we do a whole lot of bitching about the industry, the comics, our customers, and let's face it, ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
No one is escaping criticism in this podcast.
No.
Obviously, this podcast is basically just one giant cry for help that never comes.
Boy, I go that far.
So we're recording this. This is the first episode of October.
Yeah.
And that means I have done all of the September numbers except for the receipts, which I forgot to do
The financials
yesterday.
and paperwork.
Yes. The numbers being our sales and our taxes and our credits and our invoices and our billings and all of the number things.
Yeah.
And if you listened to this podcast at the end of last month, you heard us talk about how September is usually a pretty steep drop off from August every year.
Mm-hmm.
Every year, it slows down in September, and that's true, and it always happens. However, this year's drop off, which there was one, let's brass tacks, there definitely was a drop off from October,
Mm-hmm.
but this September
From August, you mean.
was. Oh yeah, what did I say?
October.
Oh boy, I hope October is better than September. Yeah, if you're new to this podcast, you'll notice I misspeak a lot.
I only corrected you that time because
It doesn't make any sense.
yeah, if people thought we were comparing it to October, then they would probably be drawing different conclusions.
Well, let me just say that as of right now, September 2024 has crushed October 2024.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a blip. It's not even a contest.
yeah,
Those 3 days in October of sales.
yeah. Somehow didn't match an entire month of September.
Yeah. What I meant to say was that while September dropped off from August, like it always does, it didn't drop off as bad as we were expecting. And while it wasn't our best September of all time or anything like that,
Mhm.
it was trending up. And that is
From the last 2 years.
that's a positive ray of light
Sure.
when you look at sales overall. The industry right now is, I was going to say flooded with, but I don't want to be disrespectful to other parts of the country that are going with.
Yeah, I would phrase it differently.
Yeah. Can't use deluge either, can I?
Nope.
There is a ton of product out every single week.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some weeks where our shelves are just crammed. We
Yeah.
have a dedicated 16-foot section for new releases. So that is 4-foot shelves,
Mhm.
or 4-foot sections that have
Yeah.
6 shelves each.
We
and
have
each of those shelves
24 4-foot sections, basically, that we're working with.
Okay. And each of those individual sections can hold 7 normal size comics full faced.
Yeah.
So if you do the math to that, 7 times 24, it's a lot of spaces.
It's true.
And some months it's very hard, or I'm sorry, weeks. Some weeks, see, I misspeak. Some weeks it's very hard to fill all those spaces. Lately, it is getting hard to put everything on the shelves.
Yeah, one of the things we like to do for New This Week product is we want to full face everything that we can. So if a Marvel series has 5 different covers, that issue will get 5 different spots at a minimum because we want to make sure that people can see the full cover. That's difficult to do going forward because 6 years ago, we might have been in a situation where most books had 2 covers. But now we're reaching a point where most books have 4 or 5 covers, and we don't stock
Every cover.
every open order variant we can. There's a lot of stuff from Marvel and DC that we do for subscription only. We don't stock them for the shelves. But even then, issue number 1s, we might have interest in a bunch of different covers. So for like the DC All-In Special this week, we had the main cover, which was a flip book, so we wanted to display both the covers so people could see the full image. So that's 2 spots right there. And then we had 2 different wraparound cardstock covers that, again, we wanted to display the full image of, so that's 4 more spots. 1 in 25 incentive variant. I think at least 1 more book that maybe had like a foil cover or something.
Something, yeah.
So it just the DC All-In Special, and that's not even counting, we wanted to then display it over a few different spots because we wanted to draw the eye to it. We had a lot of copies. We wanted to really push it. So there's that. And then just like an issue of Batman for the month is the main cover, at least 1 open order cover. In this case, we had the open order cover, I think maybe a second open order cover, and the foil cover, and then 1 to 2 incentive variants. So that's an issue. Batman
153
had like 5 spots. And there's so many books like that.
And we don't, even on our individual comic racks of the things that are not new this week, we have I don't remember how long that wall is, 27 feet? I don't know. It's a lot.
8 4-foot sections, so 32 feet.
So it's double our
Mhm.
new release section.
Yeah.
And those books are racked alphabetically by character. So Action goes under S for Superman, Amazing goes under S for Spider-Man.
All
But it's
the
just-
X-Men
it's-
books go under X.
Yeah, just a straight alphabetical book listing. And we don't fan those out. We don't, we will stack, like, each title basically gets one spot, maybe two, because there's so many titles.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't fan them out. We try not to. We only fan it out if a shelf has a distillery book or a magazine-sized book that takes up more than one space.
Right, but
And
even
then it has to
then,
condense the other ones down.
even then, when I'm doing it, I don't ever want to do something where book A is half covered by book B.
Right. So
I always want to take book A and give that 1.5 spaces, and then give book B a spot.
Yeah. So if a book is fanned out, it's fanned over itself.
Right. So Birds of Prey might get 1.5 spaces, as opposed to Birds of Prey getting half a space and Blasphemous getting a space and a half on top of it,
Yeah.
essentially.
But that's our personal choice. We don't like waterfall shelving. We don't like, when we say fanning, we mean stacking books on top of each other with just the left spine showing.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes that has to be done for graphic novel new releases because it's the comics industry, man. It's feast or famine. There's no, lately, there's no rhyme or reason to how things come out. It seems like the last couple of months, everybody is stacking the last week of the month. Those are the weeks that seem to be the fullest. And this is just a small section of what we get, but breaking down Penguin Random House invoices for 2 weeks from now, when you immediately look at it, it tells, like on the Penguin Random House site, when you look at an invoice, before you even click on it, it tells you how many units you have coming.
What Penguin Random House calls the pre-delivery report, which is something that you're not invoiced and they haven't shipped yet, but it's letting you know what they're expecting to ship out over different weeks. And there's like one for books that are releasing on Wednesday, which is just comics, or also like graphic boxes from Marvel or posters. And then a different pre-delivery report for book trade stuff, because that releases on Tuesday as opposed to Wednesday. So that's all your graphic novels for the week, all your trade paperbacks, hardcovers, omnibuses, all that stuff.
Yeah, so the big number is usually just single issue comics. The smaller number, and like the smaller number, it's maybe like 50 a week.
Mm-hmm.
And that's every title and every quantity combined.
Total units.
And that averages like between 30 and 50. It's pretty consistent.
Yeah.
Unless it's a huge manga week. But even that, a lot of our manga is split up through other distributors. So for Penguin Random House, the single issue comics, what that is Marvel, that is IDW, that is Dark Horse.
Mm-hmm.
And the last week's quantity total was like 435 pieces, which is very, very low. And when I say last week, what I mean is this upcoming week. Those are the books we'll be getting
So
this
the week
week.
of October 9th.
Yeah. But this morning I was working on the week after that, which would be
The 16th.
15th and 16th. It's 700 and something pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 300 extra.
Nearly double.
Yeah. And that's just for those three publishers. And that is just 1 week difference.
Yeah.
And this doesn't count DC Comics, Image Comics.
Right. Boom.
Yeah.
And so on. Yeah.
So it's really, like, it's always been incredibly hard to have a budget
Mm-hmm.
as a comic book retailer, because you never know what's coming out. And sure, there's release dates, and sure, there are expected delivery dates, but even that stuff gets pushed back a lot. And now that we've been having trouble with Lunar getting us even their shipping manifests in a timely manner,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm trying to do my job, I try to do it as early as possible for breaking down the books that are coming out. I've started using the website League of Comic Book Geeks
Okay.
to find out what's coming out in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And each week that I've done it, there have been mistakes. There are books that they have a release date for that aren't coming out.
Sure.
And a lot of times I will double check. I'm like, okay, is this, it's usually smaller publishers, like, is this coming out? Is this coming out?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out that I have scheduled for next week Batman Full Moon #1, and it in fact is not out until the week after.
Yeah.
So that went out in our email today.
Whoops.
That's coming out next week, and it is not. So that needs to be kept in mind when I'm doing the new release lists for the boards for next week.
Sure.
But it also had a write-up and everything.
Oh, whoops.
And that is because I usually don't double-check Lunar stuff. I spot
I guess
check
you will
it.
now.
Yeah. I spot check it. Honestly, I just forget to sometimes. And here's
fair.
one of the problems. The last couple of weeks, Lunar has been so late with the invoices that I used to be able to do them on Thursdays.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, I've pushed them to Saturdays because that's when the invoices finally go up.
Right.
Sometimes they're not up Saturday morning, so I forget to do them until Tuesday, the day before
Sure.
the books are coming out. So then I have to rush through the stuff because I've forgotten to do it.
Sure.
Because they have completely blown the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes things a little bit more difficult when you have a set routine and it's completely up in the air every week, which is honestly a thing that we've been dealing with for a few months now.
Yeah.
And hopefully it changes soon.
I hope.
Hopefully we don't have to keep talking about it, but it does make our jobs so much harder.
It really does.
And our jobs have been so much harder since the pandemic. And sure, nobody likes hearing about that because that's 40 years now.
Right. It's
but
the new
man,
normal.
It's not getting easier.
No, and I don't think it ever will.
And everything that is on par to make life easier just doesn't happen.
Yeah, there's certainly some background things that could make things a little bit more reliable as far as like data and processes and things like that. But it's never going to get easier. It'll just get more like it'll be easier to manage it, which doesn't make it easier. It just makes it easier to manage.
Sure, but who likes routine? Who likes having a boring job where you know exactly what you're doing every day? Who doesn't like having things up in the air and being like, hey, when are your books coming in? I don't know.
It's the best.
Did you happen to check last night? I of course, was out last night. And if we should expect Penguin Random House tomorrow?
I checked it this morning, and they hadn't been picked up yet, but they could pick them up tonight, and they would still show up tomorrow.
Okay.
So I was going to check them a little later in the day. The last time I checked, it was like breakfast, so I didn't expect that they would be.
But isn't it traditionally you could tell Wednesday nights?
No, Wednesday night is when Penguin Random House sends out the UPS manifest saying, here's what's shipping and what the tracking numbers are and what's in each box.
Okay.
But that just means that they've labeled it. It doesn't mean it's gone anywhere. You can always check that Wednesday night, and it will tell you that UPS has not picked it up yet.
But has it been that way the last 2 weeks when they've been much later than normal?
So there has been no change in when they pack the books and label the books. There has been a change in when the books get picked up by UPS.
Okay.
So I'll check it again tonight, and hopefully they are picked up by UPS, and we should have them on Friday. But yeah.
And to be fair, this is 100% a thing I could do myself. I just
you can do it right now.
I'm used to you doing it. You know what? If you did it right now, then we'd be able to give everybody an answer in real time.
That would be neat.
And then we will know if, just for a little bit, you have one less thing to deal with on a Monday and or
tomorrow between 10:45 a.m. and 12:45 p.m.
Hey, look at that.
They have your package in Plainfield, Illinois.
Wow.
I'm sorry, Plainfield, Indiana.
Oh, less close.
Yeah.
This will be the first Friday in weeks that we've gotten them.
Well, they haven't gotten them yet.
Fair. But if it does happen.
Right.
Which obviously by the time this goes out to anybody, it'll already have happened.
Sure.
We hope.
Oh, here's a funny thing.
Oh, let's go. I'm good for a laugh. Okay.
One of the boxes is listed as shipment ready for UPS. UPS doesn't have possession of the package yet.
Great.
So, which one is this?
I'm sure it's the biggest one.
214. Let's go back.
So you're checking the weight of the box, or you can see what's actually in that box?
You can see what's in the box. It is the one with all of the variant covers, or a lot of the variant covers.
Okay.
It is a box with 138 items, which is relative to the other boxes. It is. Can't tell what's in that box. It's a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
They're all about the same.
138 box items in a box is pretty small.
No, this is the other one. 53 items. So it's the smallest box.
Okay.
It's just the way they have the total numbers. It's the one for the box above it, not the one that you're looking at. So yeah, 53 items.
That's not frustrating at all.
53 items, and it looks like incentive variants, some Dark Horse stuff, a bunch of like 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s and 5s.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it sucks because that means that if everything but that stuff shows up, I still can't receive anything until Monday because
That's right.
it's like there's 50, like there's 24 different line items that we just wouldn't have gotten yet, and it's like I don't want to do this twice. So
And
maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know.
Normally, you would receive that on Sunday.
Yeah. Well,
Given the option.
Given the option, if everything had shown up by the weekend, I wouldn't pull Penguin Random House until Monday. I would do Lunar on Sunday because that's a little easier because the titles are all corrected in Managed Comics for Lunar on Sunday when they are not for Penguin Random House. So if I receive Penguin Random House on Sunday, that's like an additional 30 to 45 minutes of work I have to do correcting every title. And then they're not standardized with how they normally do them. It's just me getting rid of a lot of the things and adding in ratio quantities and deleting some things that are superfluous information that we wouldn't use in a title. And I always would prefer that Managed Comics do that, so it's standardized with how they normally do things. But if I only have Penguin Random House and I don't have Lunar, then I'm receiving Penguin Random House on Sunday because I got to get something done. I cannot keep saving it until later in the week because then it all makes every additional day more difficult to deal with.
This is more of a hypothetical situation question that's not really looking for an answer. But I'm assuming that when Brian from Managed Comics had the idea for Managed Comics and implemented it and had it up and running, that he didn't think he was going to have to spend so much time every week correcting titles in the system.
Probably not.
And that this is something that the Comet Standard will hopefully fix.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to point fingers at any one specific distributor, but it certainly seems like Penguin Random House is the most frustrating when it comes to how they do their titles. As we've noticed, when we get pre-delivery report information, it doesn't include any ratio quantities.
Yeah.
Because they have a separate column for whether a book is hardcover or softcover, books that ship in two different formats don't list in their title whether it's a hardcover or a softcover. So like Lore Olympus 7 just says Lore Olympus 7 for two different line items, but if you go to the far right column, they'll say hardcover or softcover. That's not helpful for us. We would prefer that to be in the title of the book.
Here's the thing I don't need in the title of the book, and this is absolutely no disrespect to anybody in the creative process, but as far as a title of a book goes, I don't need to know the inker or the colorist.
Yeah, there's certain DC variants that their titles are basically a short story because it is the name of the book, which could be a title and a subtitle, the issue number, the specific theme month of the variant, then the penciler, the inker, maybe the colorist, and then if it's an incentive variant, the ratio quantity. So it's just like, it just goes on forever.
For Image and Image mainly, they do all of the Ghost Machine variants list the cover artist and the cover colorist. Mm-hmm. All of the Walking Dead variants list the cover artist and the cover colorist. Mm-hmm. And look, those jobs are important. And again, no disrespect, those creators deserve recognition, but not in a data field for the title.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And also, this may be an unpopular stance, but I don't think any punctuation belongs in a title field.
No, and we've had plenty of times where, because of Penguin Random House's formatting, they have a bunch of titles that have commas in them, which means when you export those in a CSV file, they break the CSV fields.
Yep.
Every TMNT black, white, and green that we have to download from Managed Comics, if it hasn't been corrected by Managed Comics yet, I have to compile all of those different CSV fields because we get cover A and B and people order different ones, and now that's in 2 columns down. So I have to spend time reformatting and combining those cells to make it make sense. And that's just a thing of like, you should not have a comma in the title. Like, this is data fields. You should not have a comma in there. You know better.
I don't understand why there's hyphens or double hyphens in between, like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, mm-hmm. The Last Ronin, double hyphen, Re-Evolution, and Re-Evolution, of course, has its own hyphen.
Yep.
Why is there a double hyphen between Last Ronin and Re-Evolution? If anything, it should be a colon, mm-hmm. but it shouldn't. Just make it a space.
The thing that drives me the most insane, and I want to say this is IDW, is that they'll list cover A and the artist, and then variant B as the artist, and variant C as the artist. inexplicably cover A and then it moves to variant B, C, D, E, etc. Like, why is it not variant A and then variant B, etc.? Or why is it not cover A, cover B? Like everybody, like it feels like I'm having a stroke when I read it. I'm just like, why? What?
Here's another opinion I have about title fields. I don't think anybody should ever use the word variant. We know that they're variants.
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer cover A, cover B, cover C.
Yes, please. Please and thank you.
And you can use variant edition or whatever at the end of it if you really want to, but just cover A, B, C, etc. I think that's sufficient.
Marvel doesn't do cover A's at all or doesn't list credits for the main title.
So everything is just like Amazing Spider-Man number 72 and then Amazing Spider-Man number 72
John Romita
Mark
Jr.
Brooks variant. So it's like, who did cover A? I don't know, whoever.
Now, I do a significant amount of editing for the formatting of our new release boards and our new release pages on the website.
Mm-hmm.
And on the rare occasion I don't do it and you do it, you don't do the same amount of editing.
Nope. Usually if I do it, it's because you are unavailable to do it, which means I'm doing all my regular stuff and your stuff.
Sure.
So I do your stuff as fast as I possibly can.
And I do things the way I like to do it. I'm fully prepared to change the way I do that once the comment standard is implemented in the industry, whenever that may be. And like I'm still gonna chop off first names. I don't put first names in any of the credits. The only person who gets a first name is Jim Lee.
Sure.
Or Puppeteer Lee.
Sure. Or Jay
or
Lee.
Inhook Lee. But for the most part, like upcoming this week, there's a Barfly variant cover by Darrow.
Okay.
It's Alice Darrow.
Okay. That's different.
I still took Alice out.
Okay.
Because if you're that interested in which Darrow did the cover, you can look it up.
Okay.
Now, a lot of store websites will have each of their titles and the covers and the variant covers a clickable link to that book on their page. We don't do that because at the point it goes on the website, in the meaning it's coming out this week, you can't subscribe to it anymore. It's too late. And you can't buy it because we don't let our books go on sale on the website until the day after release to prioritize sales for people in store.
Right.
So ours are not links, they're just lists. And again, I don't think they get that much traffic that the fact that it just says Darrow is going to make somebody that incredibly disappointed when they come to the store expecting a Jeff Darrow cover and it's Alice Darrow cover. You should be excited that it's an Alice Darrow cover. Sure. Alice Darrow does really fun covers.
That sounds neat.
When they in fact do covers. So I will change to whatever formatting the Comet standard uses. There's some publishers that almost everybody, distributor-wise, uses all caps except for IDW and Dark Horse. Mm-hmm. So I have to capitalize those to make everything match.
Yeah, one of the things that has always been the most insane as Penguin Random House has added more and more publishers is that the publishers are deciding on how their titles are formatted, not the distributor, which means there is no unification within Penguin Random House to how their different books are listed. Like, IDW lists it one way, Marvel lists it another, Dark Horse lists it a third way. But when you go to something like Lunar, I think they're all pretty much the same. Yeah. Diamond has always had a very top-down approach to this is how stuff should be listed. Which is why I think when getting all the way back to what you're saying, when Brian from Managed Comics started doing this and Diamond was kind of the sole distributor, if not the chief distributor, their way of doing things was kind of just how you expected comics to be titled when you were getting data from a distributor. But now, again, we're in a world where like you get it from at least 3 different distributors and they all have a completely different rule, which is why the comment standard is necessary. Because when one distributor won't even exercise any oversight to their individual publishers, then it means the entire community needs to start having rules about this. Like Penguin Random House basically ruined it for everyone, is kind of my thesis statement, is that if Penguin Random House had done things differently, the comment standard would not have been required. Literally, like, Marvel comics from Penguin Random House are all caps, and then IDW books are mixed case.
Yeah.
It's just, this you can't, there's no one internally in Penguin Random House that thinks this should look differently?
I still go back to this one invoice we got like 2 years ago from Simon & Schuster, and we were restocking a bunch of different volumes of the manga Toilet Bound Hanoko-kun.
Mhm.
And we'd gotten a bunch of different volumes, and the title for that manga was listed
On the packing list.
on the packing list 7 different ways.
It's just ridiculous.
For the same book, the same series, just different volumes in the series, 7 different ways. And
Simon & Schuster has had a number of times where I'm looking at the packing list and we'll get like 4 different volumes of Dragon Ball Super. And one of them is damaged. But every line item just says Dragon Ball Super with no volume numbers.
yeah, you have
So
to
I have to look at the ISBN on the back
Yeah.
to figure out which one is this? How am I reporting this? Which one do I have and which one do I not? Like, you can't... Again,
Very
Jesus.
frustrating. Now, there is a difference in the way books are listed on a packing slip versus how we have how they're broken down in our inventory check-in program, Stocky. And that's because we use Stocky versus just importing the invoices directly how they're done. So Stocky breaks it down by publisher.
Yeah, the 2 reasons we have to do Stocky instead of just importing the invoices through Managed Comics like we would for our weekly orders are, the first one is the major one, and that's that we have inventory that exists in our system that predates Managed Comics. And if we tried to import invoices containing those items through Managed Comics would just create a duplicate item with that new quantity to it. So if we tried to receive Batman the Dark Knight Returns graphic novel, which we had before we got Managed Comics, it would suddenly have like a Batman Dark Knight Returns and then a Batman Dark Knight Returns from Managed Comics. And that's bad. That's bad for our inventory to have duplicate items with different order levels and quantities and identical barcodes. That would be a nightmare. So we can't do that. And the other problem is, currently, the way it's configured, Managed Comics doesn't really have a sales or an order history. It doesn't have an order history within Managed Comics. It has a sales history. It can read your Shopify inventory and understand like what you sold for things, which is necessary when we're doing things like final order cutoffs and initial orders each month or each week for final order cutoffs. What it doesn't understand is that you've actually ordered something. So you can't go into Managed Comics and say, okay, but we did an FOC for, The Amazing Spider-Man that's coming out in 2 weeks. What did we order? Managed Comics doesn't know. And that goes the same for any reorders we place. So when we place a reorder with Penguin Random House, there's nothing in Managed Comics that says, okay, you have a copy of that on order. So there's nothing that would stop us from reordering it, knowing that we have a copy that just hasn't arrived yet. So we can't do it that way through Managed Comics. So there's nothing to say when it comes in, okay, this is an order that you've already placed, so that removes it from essentially like your on order or incoming quantity. Managed Comics can't do that.
It's funny.
Stocky can.
Because on days you don't work and an order shows up, I always say out loud, this is an order we've already placed. But it in fact doesn't do anything to change quantities or take into account sales records.
No, that's
but I do
it's
say
a failing of the technology.
Because it is in fact an order we placed because it came in.
Yep.
Unless it's an order I didn't know we placed, and I'm like, how did this get here?
Why? Who is this? This goes to the barber shop.
I love it when something comes in, and this is just a general mail thing. But yesterday a box came in addressed to me, and it's from the UK. I'm like, what is this? It's too small to be a book from Waterstone. What could this be? And then you open it up, I'm like, oh, it's this 15th Doctor Sonic Screwdriver. I forgot it. This is coming. What a surprise.
Yay, what a gift.
Yay. Past Patrick gave Present Patrick a gift, which Present Patrick loves and plays with every day. I mean, I've had
Talk about Present Patrick.
There you go. I mean, I've only had it for a day and a half, but I am putting the temporary batteries to their maximum.
I have many more of that style of battery I can
usage. It's now time to thank our Patreon supporters, including our annual patrons, Usi Arun Singh, Becca Hilburn and Joseph Coco, Bren Helt, Dal's mom Diane Bush, President of the Brian Garside Fan Club, Django Borin, Jose and Genevieve Villagomez, Josh Crowley of Westfield Comics, our bestest wrestling watching pal, Michael Lee, Michael Romanenko, Severio the Cat, our patrons who have created their own tier, Andrew, Drew Troy Aaliyah, Chris Burton, Claudine Neville, our other generous patrons from the Say My Name pledge level, Ben-Hur Benedict Calaguas,
Brad Brooks,
Manage Comics' own Brian Garside,
Christopher Haith of Crooked Dog Comics,
Drew Triner and Ashley Edwards,
Gareth from Monkey Rocks Comics,
my brother George Brower, Heidi D.,
Holly Aitchison,
Jacob Sorelli of Kamikaze, Josh Trigg, Mark Hammond of Aw Yeah Comics, Margie, Keith, Logan, and Malcolm Springham, Matt Armstrong, Mitchell Davies of All-Star Comics in Melbourne, Australia,
Morgan Kaiju Perry, Nicholas Fenner,
my longtime pal Robert Burns, Ron Payne, Sean Bowers, Tad Eggleston and Johnny Williams, Thomas Nagovin of Century Guild, Walt Grogan,
Walt's Comic Shop from Berlin, Germany.
And if you want to hear your name thanked on this very podcast once a month, head over to patreon.com/challengers and pledge at the $5 Say My Name level. And a big thank you to all our other patrons at the various other pledge levels. Earlier in this episode, we alluded to how much stuff is coming out on a weekly basis. And it is a concern of ours and many of our retailer brethren in the industry about just how much product is out, how hard it is to find audiences for everything, how hard it is to rack stuff. You know, we talked earlier about how we put things on shelves. A lot of people do things differently and don't have the space that we have allocated.
Oversaturation is a huge problem, not just in the sense of like you'll burn an audience out, but also no store has limitless space. Stores have generally a very fixed amount of square footage to deal with, and you have to get kind of creative when you've been open for a number of years with how you deal with that, because you've probably got a large inventory. Your inventory probably gets larger every year one way or the other. We don't even buy collections, so we're not even a store that has to deal with somebody just bought 20 long boxes. Where are those going to go?
Yeah.
How are those going to get put out? Or you have to maintain a back issue selection. Well, there's more comics literally every week, so how big can your back issue section get? We don't have that, but we still have new comics that need spaces, and graphic novels that need to go on bookshelves, toys that need to go on the wall, pop vinyls that need to get put on shelves.
Another symptom of that, for me personally, is burnout. I am having a hard time keeping up with all the new titles that are coming out. I'm having a hard time keeping up with the regular ongoing titles
Sure.
that are on my polls list. And one of the jokes I make to everybody, I'd say it jokingly, but I believe it, no comics fan is current with their reads.
That's true.
Everybody is behind on something.
I'm really good with all my single comics, but I'm real bad with my graphic novels.
Yeah.
I was very excited about the Unico graphic novel that Guru Hero is illustrating, so much so that I funded the Kickstarter, and then immediately found out, like, oh, it's coming out through Scholastic. I could have bought this for myself at a fraction of the cost. But it was the Kickstarter. I wanted to support them. It came in. I've gotten like a third of the way into it. And it's like, this is a kid's graphic novel. I could probably read this thing in 45 minutes.
Sure.
I haven't.
Yep.
It's to my left on a shelf. I keep meaning to. The Boulay Notes graphic novel that just recently came out from, I want to say, Oni. Full of amazing strips that I either have read digitally and never in print, or just never seen at all. It's just been sitting on my nightstand, unread, for months. I got a shelf of Absolute editions from DC that have not even been unwrapped. I mean, it's all stuff I've read originally when it came out, but these things have been wrapped for like 2 years, and I have not touched them, and I mean to, and I haven't. So that's my weakness.
But to my point, all these new miniseries that are coming out, because almost everything that comes out from everybody is a miniseries.
Pretty much.
And they're all short runs, and so many of them that some of them you read the first issue and you think, all right, I got a handle on this.
Yep.
I'm not going to finish it. Other ones, like, I want to finish this. I want to read all of Deviant. Deviant's a great book. I want to see what happens.
Yeah.
I'm just disappointed with how slow it comes out.
Sure.
But other books, especially when it's like a name creator doing something off the beaten path, and they send you a email PDF, and you know it's like a 4-issue mini, I look at it and say, I can't work up the excitement to do this, and it's my job to do it. But there's literal books I just look at and go, I'm not interested.
Yeah, I don't want to call out specific creators, but I'm going to. All the Scott Snyder stuff that's been coming out from Dark Horse via Comixology has been really underwhelming sales-wise. It seems like no one cares, no one has any interest. And some of that's on us as a retailer to not be hand-selling it and promoting it. But it doesn't seem like anyone's lives are worse for not having read it. I don't feel like we could be making hundreds more dollars a day if we were only selling more copies of Duck and Cover or Dudley Datsun, or
I was going to mention Dudley Datsun,
Night
and the Forever Machine,
or Canary, or like Barnstormers did okay for us. We Have Demons did okay for us, but everything else has just been. It's weird because Scott Snyder's got Absolute Batman coming out this week, and we probably ordered more copies of that than we have literally anything else this year that I can think of.
Combined.
Like thinking of raw numbers of copies, not across like multiple printings or whatever, but like just raw number of copies for the initial release.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's more copies of Absolute Batman #1 than probably any other single comic I can think of for this year.
I was saying than of any of his Comixology books combined.
But that's the thing. Like, and then you look at something like Duck and Cover, and it's like collectively across 2 covers, we don't even get 10 copies.
Yeah, and it's Scott Snyder and Raphael Albuquerque.
Yeah, and we like the American Vampire Team. Like,
yeah,
but nobody seems to care. And I shouldn't say nobody. Up to 10 people care.
Right.
That's not good, man. Like, this isn't like and that's for other creators as well. I was saying to Molly Jane the other day, looking at the number of copies we were getting in and selling of stuff like Nemesis Rogues Gallery, Joy Operations.
The new Jupiter's Legacy is out in 2 weeks.
That if you told me 5 years ago that Mark Miller and Brian Bendis were doing stuff exclusively at Dark Horse, I would have thought Dark Horse was the biggest company in the industry.
Right.
And now it's like, oh no, that's not what it means. It means the other thing.
We don't do even 10 copies of any of those books.
Nemesis,
Masterpiece did well for us.
Yeah, Nemesis and the new Prodigy from Mark Miller at Dark Horse, basically zero interest. Like, it's not literally 0 copies sold, but it is very, very close to it off the shelf. And we do not have a lot of subscribers.
Don't worry. Mark Miller is in talks at Marvel to do something that's going to be bigger than Civil War.
He needs it. He needs it real bad.
So going back to Dudley Datsun, before we get too far away, I read that as a PDF, and I thought it was really fun, but I also knew, I'm like, this is going to be so hard to hand sell, and I'll maybe get 2 people into it, that my effort is better placed some other book.
Well, and the bigger problem for some of this stuff is that one of the perils of hand selling is, let's say someone's at the checkout counter and you're like, you know what, Barnstormers, they're going to love Barnstormers. And you push Barnstormers and they're hesitant and you're like, look, let me explain it to you. And the light goes off and they're like, yeah, it sounds good. I'm going to get that. You sold a copy of Barnstormers. Amazing. You can't make them read it. So they're going to buy that book. They're probably going to take it home. It's going to sit in a pile. They're going to read it 3 months from now. And
you can't make them add it to their list.
They've already missed 2.
Yeah.
They might forget to buy 3. And it's just like, so even when you can do that, when you can push so hard on certain like #1s, like, and I'll choose a different book that I love and I'm so excited is coming back. I Heart Skullcrusher is coming back. That miniseries was great. I read every issue. I'm excited about the new one. We saw a huge drop off between issue 1 and issue 2 because we could push the shit out of issue 1 and people really connected with it. They either didn't read it or didn't read it in enough time to ever come back for another issue and remember that they wanted it. And that's so problematic for a lot of those sort of, like, you put it in people's hands books. You're better off, and I hate saying it this way, you're better off if you're a store pushing a graphic novel than you are a single comic, because the hope is, and we've always felt this way erroneously, is that you're better off pushing a single comic, because if I can get you to read, if I can get you to buy issue 1, then I've sold the next 9 issues. It seems like it's not working out that way anymore because people are just so inundated with books and so behind on their stuff that the odds of them actually reading it at a time to do any business on 2, 3, 4, 5 is not great. But at least if you sell Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees for $17 to $20, it's a complete story. And maybe they come back and they want something else, but at the very least, you sold $20 worth of comics. You sold the 6 issues of the book.
We're also
right
out of
then.
that right now.
I ordered a bunch more. We'll be getting
Yay.
more next week. It's on the front table.
Not right now, it isn't.
It has a space on the front
Yes,
table.
yes, it does. Yes, it does.
And
But I mean, that's a perfect example because that's a really good book to push and say, hey, it's done in one of this
Right.
whole thing, and it's really good.
And I mean, maybe that's something that we would do with some of the other books, like, you know, Brian Bendis stuff, Mark Miller stuff, Scott Snyder stuff. But in all honesty, I saw that stuff, and Tula Lotay is one of my all-time favorite artists. I didn't read past issue 1 of Barnstormers. I thought it was okay. Thought the art was fine. It has the thing that I will complain about forever for all the Comixology stuff by Scott Snyder and his collaborators that Dark Horse is publishing. Every issue is 2 chapters instead of 1 chapter per issue, which makes the first chapter in each issue have no cliffhanger whatsoever. It ends on what should be a cliffhanger, and then you just turn the page and it's the next one. So it's like you're not reading individual issues like you think you're buying. You're reading 1/3 of a graphic novel. And that's different. And that is, pacing-wise, counterintuitive to me, and I really dislike it. I don't know for all the world why all of that Dark Horse Comixology Scott Snyder stuff is 3 issues instead of 6. It makes 0 sense to me. If I ever corner anyone from Dark Horse or Comixology or Scott Snyder, that will be the first question I will want to ask them. Is like, why did this happen? Why did you do it this way? And I'll try to keep all the malice out of my mouth.
What if Scott Snyder comes stumbling into the store, covered in blood, about to pass out, clearly needing of medical assistance?
I'll make it contingent on getting an answer to my question, yes.
All right. I said no.
I have all the power in that situation. Look at me. Look at me. I'm the captain now.
But there's so many PDFs I get, and I love getting PDFs from publishers. We got G.I. Joe #1 today.
I didn't read
from
Skybound.
from Skybound and from Arun Singh, and that's great. But you're definitely going to read it.
Oh yeah, I've
And
read
I'm gonna
all
read
the Energon PDFs I get. I
Yeah.
love them because I read those books and I like those books. When I read those, that's not Dell the retailer who needs to read issue 4 of Scarlet in PDF. I don't. I know what I'm going to order for Scarlet, and it's largely going to be based off of A, subscriptions, and B, what we sold of issue 3. That's the math. There's nothing that you're going to show me in the PDF where I'm going to be like, I got to double my numbers, because I know sales are not going to double between 3 and 4. That's not how the market works. So those I read just because I want to read stuff. But every #1 PDF is a mixture of, 1, I'm genuinely excited about Absolute Wonder Woman, so I'm going to read that PDF. But 2, like, is this genuinely good, and who is this for? Who can I sell this to? What does the market look like for this book? And quality is not the sole variable in this. There's obviously a bunch of other things, but if a book is good, I feel like I can push it a little harder than if it's not good. Or if I like it, I guess I shouldn't say good or bad is objective. I'm thinking subjectively, like, can I get excited about this?
One of the things that Boom does recently that I really appreciate as a comic book reader is every Friday they send out an email full of assets for their next week's new releases. Specifically, they'll give us a PDF for every book they have coming out. Now, as a retailer, it's too late to order those books to have them on hand if you missed it or if you think you need to up them or whatever.
Right.
But as a reader, it lets me knock those out over the weekend. So by the time we get our Boom books on Tuesdays from Diamond, I don't have to worry about rushing to read them Tuesday night before Wednesday. I've had a couple days to read the PDFs, and I like getting them in advance, and that's why I never have to bug you and say, hey, can you bring me home something to the children?
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned this in previous weeks when we were talking about the late shipments.
But my point is I don't understand how it helps retailers to get them.
Oh, well, I was about to say, like, one of the things that I don't know if I mentioned or not in past weeks when we were talking about the Lunar late shipments or the Penguin Random House late shipments is that it affects my ability to read stuff before Wednesday, and being able to read stuff before Wednesday is kind of crucial to my job. Not in the sense of, like, literally just getting through stuff, but by giving it to me early, I can do it in a more relaxed way, which makes me as a reader respond better to the material, which then makes me more likely to think of it positively when someone's asking about it in the store, when I have to give recommendations, when we have to decide what to push via social media or our communications to our customers. So if I work a long day on Tuesday unpacking multiple shipments, and then I get home and I have to read 10 books before Wednesday, I'm probably not going to enjoy most of those 10 books. I'm going to be exhausted. I'm going to resent having to do it at the last minute. So I'm going to get through stuff as quickly as possible. Anything that's like on the edge as far as like, I'm not really crazy about it, I'm just going to throw to the side. I'm just going to say, no, forget it.
This is a snapshot into the way we used to talk about books when they were new. And I would say to Dal, this is before a book would come out, hey, did you read this week's Cable? And Dal would either say yes or not yet, or I flipped through it.
And that's what I do for a lot of like superhero stuff that I'm not crazy into. I might just take a copy of, I don't want to call any one book out, but like a Marvel superhero book that's in the middle of its run, and I'll just take it home and I'll kind of flip through it and I'll see if there's anything interesting or what the art's like, or if a character shows up.
But you don't read word balloon to word balloon to
Yeah,
word balloon. You don't read caption to caption.
Burn through pages. I'm not sitting down and reading it to enjoy it. I'm just trying to understand, like, all right, where is the story at, in case anyone asks.
I think the difference I was trying to get to with the Boom PDF specifically is for a title like Blow Away,
mm-hmm.
you would read issue 1,
mm-hmm.
and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes if something really sticks with me, again, I Heart Skull Crusher was one that I read the PDF and loved it and was like, yes, I'm reading this now for enjoyment, not just for sales.
But from that point on, you would only read it in comic form because you prefer to consume it that way. Where I read almost all of I Heart Skull Crusher in those Boom PDFs.
Yeah, and mostly, and it's funny you should mention that because that kind of came up this week. One of the things I don't ever want to do is get too far ahead of where our customers are at, because I find it more difficult to answer questions about what's going on in a book if I'm an issue ahead of them.
Sure.
To have that discussion of like what just came out or what's out this week, I could not, in my brain, talk about the new issue of Batman with anyone because I read that thing 3 weeks ago when they gave us the PDF. Yeah. And so I honest to God, had to pick up a copy and flip through it and go, oh, Riddler stuff. That's right. We're doing Riddler stuff now. Like I could not, because I had just recently read the Detective PDF for the first Tom Taylor one. I couldn't remember which book was which as far as what they were doing. And that's a problem with reading that stuff way too far in advance. And way too far in advance literally just means 3 weeks ago. That's how many books I read and how badly I retain stuff now.
You and I had that issue with Power Fantasy number 1 and 2 because we got 1 and 2 from Kieran Gillen. Mm-hmm. And I read them both, and you just read 1. You're like, I'm going to wait for 2 until it's in print.
Yep.
And I'm like, no, but I want to talk about what happened in 2.
Sorry. You got to wait. Yeah, I definitely have a specific way I want to consume my media. Like I'm really bad at binging stuff for TV shows. I don't ever really want to do more than an episode of something a day. And I don't even mind doing an episode a week, but I don't want to do multiple episodes in one day. Like I find that not disrespectful, but I don't feel like I'm getting as much out of the entertainment if I'm just consuming it and moving on to the next one. I like having it sit in my brain a little bit. I like being able to think about it.
In my life, there are 2 novels I read in one sitting.
Whichever is longer is which one you feed more. Is that the expression?
Yes.
Sorry.
2 novels I read, picked it up, and didn't put it down until I was done. And it was Robert Bloch, Night of the Ripper, and Howling Mad by Peter David. Mm-hmm. One was about Jack the Ripper. One was about werewolf or wolf wear. Mm-hmm. What if a wolf gets bit by a werewolf? 3 days a month becomes a man.
Well, okay.
And then he runs for mayor. Anyway, especially Night of the Ripper, which was a very involved whodunit kind of modern day Descendants of Jack the Ripper kind of book. Reading it in one sitting is doing it a disservice because you need to sit and think about it and have ideas and wonder where it's going to go. There's no investment when you just there's no cliffhanger like you said earlier.
Right. And it's additionally a thing of like, and I think we're getting into a completely different non-comics topic here, but
it's like Kamen Rider.
The story
when they change into a motorcycle, that's what they do, right?
Some of them, yes. The thing you're experiencing in a book or a series of comics or multiple TV shows or whatever is it's a longer span of time than you're taking to consume it. So I think without having the breaks in between them, I feel like it flattens it all into one moment, and I find it harder to enjoy it. Everything just sort of becomes whatever the last moment was and nothing else.
Do you think every single comic artist is worried about the fact that most of their monthly work is consumed in 10 minutes?
I know that was the thing that Chris Onstad, who did Achewood for a long time, took a break and then started coming back and doing it through Patreon, had complained about when he was just about to go on one of his hiatuses, was that he could spend a few days making a strip that is consumed in under 5 minutes. And it was just, to him, it was like, this is not a valuable way to make art. And some of that,
I understand it.
He tried other stuff and then he came back at it. Now he's finding a lot more happiness doing Achewood the way he's doing it through Patreon. But yeah, I
legit did not know Achewood was still a going concern.
Oh yeah. He brought it back on Patreon, and I'm a patron. I love it. It's great. It's as steady as it's been in years. And I don't even participate in all of the, like, Patreon is really pushing a lot of like creator interaction stuff.
Yeah.
Like videos and
we don't do any of that
and stuff.
As content creators ourselves.
Yeah.
Forgive the use of that phrase.
It's fine.
We don't do any of that. We just do what we do.
Yeah, and so every time he's doing like a sort of video chat, AMA, whatever, I'm like, I just want the strips, man. I don't care. I don't want any of this other stuff. But I guess it's kind of what Patreon wants you to do. They want you more involved with all of your patrons. And it's like, no, just, I want the art. And that's the end of it.
Sure.
Anyway,
comics, they're pretty great, right?
I think they are pretty great. I'm really enjoying all the all-in month stuff from DC. And to kind of get back to what you were saying before about burnout, for me, I feel like I don't get burnout on comics so much, but I get burnout on companies. And I'm really pretty burnt out on all the Marvel stuff right now. And I hate saying that because Marvel's like, when Marvel is good, Challengers is doing good. And when Marvel is doing bad, Challengers is doing bad. So I certainly don't want to give anyone the impression that they should be buying less Marvel stuff. But boy, the DC stuff is really doing it for me right now. And Marvel is kind of something that I am paging through.
Flipping through it. Yeah. As a huge Captain America fan, I was very excited.
I don't recap anymore.
J. Michael Straczynski to come on board with that book, and from the get-go, it wasn't what I wanted.
I will say that the main problem I have with Marvel right now, and this is super subjective, is the art. The number of really good artists that I'm enjoying at DC dwarfs the number of artists I'm really enjoying at Marvel. Like, I was looking at Captain America recently, and they're like, Carlos Magno is one of the artists. And I'm like, Carlos Magno is a guy that I would skip the fill-in issue he did.
Yeah.
Putting him on Captain America is like, you're asking me to not read this anymore. Jesus Saez, yes. And then Captain America had a thing where, like, almost immediately, Jesus Saez needed a guest artist, and the guest artists were not good. I had to drop X-Men with the most recent issue because the two artists they have doing it, I dislike. It's not even like I can sit through this for the story. I can't, man. Like, I don't like the art. And it seems like so frequently now I'm getting artists on books that are just a no-sell for me. I can't do it. Marvel right now does not have the art part of their
game
teams covered. They've got some good writers and they've got some good ideas and some fun looking books, but man, it feels like the only money Marvel puts in, and I don't know anything about Marvel's financials, and Tom Brevoort can go on Substack next week and tell me I'm completely wrong, and I'll believe him. But from the outside, it feels like the only money Marvel's putting in on the art for any of their books is the covers. So anybody who's any good is just doing covers now. There's no financial incentive for them to do a run on a book. And like, there's obviously exceptions. David Marquez on Uncanny X-Men is really good. There's other artists that have done some fun stuff. But all of the people that you would think of as like A-list artists, they're just doing covers at Marvel now. Because Marvel does enough goddamn covers that, and they're probably paying well enough for covers that you can just do 5 or 6 covers a month and make what you would make doing a book for a month.
Sure.
So why do the book for a month when you can just do the 6 covers? Because they need them. Marvel needs the covers. And looking at the way Marvel publishes their books, the only thing they're trying to do is make good covers that you can do, that a store can sell, that a customer wants to buy.
And put out more than monthly books.
Yeah. And yet somehow Peach Momoko does Ultimate X-Men on schedule every month and like 6 different covers. It looks like art for Wizard of the Coast for Magic.
Yeah.
How is she finding the time? I mean, Dan Moore at DC is the same thing. We're like, how are you doing 2 books at this level plus a bunch of variant covers?
Yep. And covers to those books, which is rare in itself.
Dan Moore is 3 kids in a trench coat. Like, that's the only thing that makes sense to me.
I think it's more than 6 arms.
Yeah. Peach Momoko is a county.
Because look, the bottom kid has to hold the legs of the kid on top of him for stability. So you're losing 2 arms right there already.
Look, you're overthinking this. They're only in the trench coat when they go to conventions.
Oh, so
when they're in studio, it's 3 kids.
Oh, okay.
That's how they're getting the books done.
Yeah, I was going to wonder if like they were at a standing desk.
No. They have
They'd be
those
stacked
little
so high.
those little plastic.
Well, sure, because they're not
those
on
little
the
plastic
shoulder.
IKEA
Yeah.
tables.
Gotcha.
Where they,
No, that makes sense. You've shined or shown a light on it, if you will. Hey, so lighting.
Speaking
Let's talk
of
about
lights.
lighting.
Brighton challenges.
Oh, by the way, I just wanted to mention before, I wasn't talking about Burnout. I was talking about Chris Burnham.
Oh, he's doing the next issue of TMNT?
Yeah. So
Donatello issue.
we have an ending to the lighting story, part 2, which is eerily similar to part 1, where in part 1, to refresh, I showed up before 7 o'clock on Friday to let a technician in who didn't show up until 8:19, and then did most of the work but left and had to get another technician to come in. Technician number 2 was scheduled for 7 o'clock on Monday, so I showed up at 6:45 on Monday. He showed up at, any guesses? That's right, 9:25.
Mm-hmm.
So almost 2.5 hours late. First guy at least said I couldn't find parking.
I got in.
Yeah. Second guy didn't say anything, and I didn't want to ask him because I don't want to start a professional relationship where I need someone to do a thing adversarially. So I don't want to be mad at him already. So it's just come in, get to work.
Right.
He was a little bit slower than the first guy, and there was just a thing, and you witnessed this, but I didn't get to vocalize it to you. So first guy was doing everything with the power on, didn't bother him at all.
Mm-hmm.
Second guy could also do it with the power on, but preferred to do it with power off whenever possible. So that means when he was done, he had to have the lights turned on to see if it worked, right?
Right.
So he did a light, and he did a section of lights, and he moved to another section on the same light, but it'd be a different power section. And he'd already reassembled the light. And look, I'm not an electrician, but I've done a lot of electrical work in my life, and I've done a lot of electrical work at the store, and a lot of electrical work by Blue as well. Something about the way he did it, I'm like, that didn't seem right. So I said to him, and you were there for this, but I don't know if you caught what I was doing. I'm like, did you want me to turn the power back on to that light so you can see if it was, make sure that works?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, oh, okay. Flip the switch, nothing comes on. And he goes, oh, all right. And then he has to take it apart. And I'm like, I knew it. I didn't see what he did wrong, but it felt wrong. I'm like, we got to check this light before he goes any further.
Uh-huh.
So he had to completely disassemble it and then fix it.
That's not a good system.
But he did, and he got it done. And I wanted to leave as soon as you got in Monday, because I don't work Mondays, and I was there since 6:45.
Yeah, and you had to come in early Fridays.
Yeah, and you got in around like 10:15. I wanted to leave then, but I also didn't know if we were paying at the end of the work being done.
Right.
And I wanted to be there in case they tried to
change the estimate.
Yeah, because the estimate was for the work, and there was a clause in the estimate saying, if we have to run any new electrical wires, that's going to be more money. Well, they didn't, and I knew they didn't.
Right.
And I didn't want to just leave the estimate open and have you have to deal with it. So I'm like, I'm going to wait until he's done.
Mm-hmm.
So he finishes up around, I don't know, like a little after 12.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't terrible, but I thought I'd be leaving at like 10:30.
Right.
And then I didn't have to pay. I just had to sign, and then he left. The store looks great. It's very bright. It is the first time, literally in years, that every bulb in the store works.
Yeah.
Especially the back room to Challengers, which had 2 bulbs out for a while.
Behind the counter is the one I noticed the most because there was like a bulb or maybe even a bank that was out. And so like right behind the counter,
right when you walk in the door.
I was going to say the other end, close to the back door.
Yeah.
it feels substantially brighter.
And that had that wicked hum too.
The wicked
The
hum was
electrical
all the
buzz.
way in the back.
Oh, I see.
That
Which
was-
you play a back
yeah.
door. Gotcha. And they changed all the lights in sidekicks in the back room of sidekicks, but because those fixtures have plastic plates over them, it diffuses light a little bit, so it really doesn't change the brightness in sidekicks at all.
Nope.
Sidekicks doesn't look any different whatsoever.
No.
The good news is that these new bulbs should last us for years before we have to replace them.
That's great.
And they're all up. So he leaves. I'm
Mhm.
like, great. I leave.
Mhm.
Then that was Monday. Wednesday, I get an email from the company saying, hey, we just want to make sure like we know who to bill. You know, what's the contact name? What's the phone number? What's the email address? What's the address?
Mhm.
And I thought, it's all the stuff on the estimate.
Yeah.
Like I had
Nothing's changed.
to fill out your form and sign it and send it back to you. You have all that information.
Yeah.
But fine. I did it again, gave him the information, and I thought, and I even said, I'm like, I'm just going to pay with a debit card, although it turns out I didn't type debit, it autocorrected to best. I'm just going to pay with a best card,
Mhm.
so I can just call it in.
Sure.
They get back to me today saying, A, what do you mean by best card? Did you mean credit?
I did not.
But also, if you pay by card, we charge you an extra 3%,
Ooh.
which I think is complete, utter bullshit for a business to pass that on to the consumer.
Yeah.
That is a cost of doing business. We've talked about this before on our podcast, Contest Challengers,
Mhm. Comics
Industry Business Podcast, and Challengers Comics, Chicago. I think that's so incredibly, what's the word?
I think it's tacky.
It's wrong. It's offensive.
Yeah. State of Illinois did it to me when I had to renew my license online.
Sure. We have to, for every time we pay the bag tax, we have to pay a processing fee.
Yep.
For every time we renew our business license,
Yep.
we have to pay
I think
the
anything for the
processing
state
fee.
of Illinois, if you use a credit card, they're charging you
Yeah.
a credit card fee.
I hate when businesses do that, so I said, never mind. I'm just going to send you a check.
Uh-huh.
Send me the bill, and I'm going to write out a fucking paper check, which is so archaic.
Uh-huh.
You can't handle, man, come on. I'm not paying you 3% more. I want a discount for the personal inconvenience. You saw the Monday email I sent where I said, look. Now look. That's the thing that Tim Wall says all the time. Now look. I have no problem with the work. Your guys are hardworking and they get the job done. What I'm not thrilled with is the complete disregard for my personal time. And he said, I'm sorry about that.
You should have deducted 3 hours of your hourly wage.
Right?
That's how much you owe me for sitting here waiting for a technician to show up
So
who has not shown up yet.
I still don't know what they're going to charge us.
Yeah.
And at this point, if it's just what the quote was, fine.
Right.
Again, I feel like I should be owed a little something for the multiple days of inconvenience.
You will almost definitely have to fight for that
I
when
know.
there is
Look,
a final number.
I'll suck it up just because I'm very happy to finally have the lights done.
Sure.
Literally after years.
Yeah.
And thank you again to every single shelf sponsor who made this possible.
Seriously.
It is 100% because of you that we were able to do this.
Yeah.
So thank you to each and every one of you.
Thanks, folks.
And we're proud to have most of your names on display on the shelves at the store. And there's plenty more sponsorships available if anybody else wants to help us do some other wanted improvements. But I'm very happy the lights are done.
Yeah.
And I'm still just
Shelves
wondering
and sidekicks are next.
what it's going to cost.
If you want to do a sponsorship, you're going to help us upgrade the shelves and sidekicks.
Yeah. Indeed. Almost would have happened this Monday, but because we don't know what we're getting charged for the lights yet.
Right.
Also, it's a lot of work for me.
It is.
But the store is bright, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that you've made it all this way. Thanks for listening.
And keep reading comics.
This has been Contest of Challengers. Thanks for listening. Keep reading comics. Challengers is located at 1845 Northwestern Avenue in the Bucktown neighborhood of Chicago. 773-278-0155. Keep up to date with new releases and events at challengerscomics.com. And help fund this podcast at patreon.com/challengers.